I think when you are bereaved at a very young age, anytime really, but particularly at a young age, I can resonate closely to that. You feel pain like no other pain, and you know that in your life it's going to be very difficult to come across something that's going to be even worse pain than that.
After years of tension, distance, and heartbreaking silence, Princes William and Harry have finally reunited. But what happened next has left the world speechless. Their emotional meeting took an unexpected turn when William opened up about their late mother.
The metaphorical rug can be pulled from under your feet quite quick at any point. You maybe think to yourself, it won't happen to us. But when it does happen to you, yeah, then it takes you into some pretty not great places.
Princess Diana, sharing words so powerful they changed everything between them. The moment was raw, deeply moving, and filled with long-suppressed emotions that brought both brothers to tears. What exactly did William say?
The solutions are out there. There is real solutions to these problems.
Today we reveal the emotional truth behind this unforgettable royal reunion. The silent reunion. The news didn't come with the usual royal fanfare, no press conferences, no grand announcements. Instead, it slipped quietly through a leaked advisory marked Private Royal Schedule, October 1st, 2025, 11 a.m., a date and time that would mark history. After nearly 4 long years of silence and bitter tension, Prince William and Prince Harry were finally set to meet face to face. The chosen place, a secluded family chapel hidden deep within the Sandringham estate, a place where their mother, Princess Diana, once prayed in solitude. No cameras were permitted. No journalists lurking in the shadows. Even palace staff had been cut down to a handful of trusted aides. This was not an official engagement. It was something far more personal. The monarchy had not seen such a strain in decades. What loomed wasn't about royal duties or public appearances. It was about 2 brothers, once inseparable, now fractured by scandal, resentment, and grief, standing under the same roof again. The palace was silent, but tense. Aides moved like ghosts through the halls. Every word, every glance felt like it could ignite a new headline. Insiders were told to keep their mouths shut, but as always, secrets have a way of slipping through. At exactly 11:08 a.m., the chapel doors opened. The moment everyone thought would never happen finally did. No photographers, no applause, just the sound of footsteps echoing against the stone floor. William entered first, expression calm but unreadable, followed by one senior aide who stood discreetly behind him. A few seconds later, Harry appeared, his head slightly bowed, his stride measured. Their eyes met briefly across the aisle. No words were exchanged. No smile, no handshake. Yet, neither turned away. For a family built on formalities and frost, that simple act of acknowledgement felt monumental. Outside, millions watched live coverage of an empty chapel doorway, hanging on every second. Rumors had flooded the media for months. Claims that Harry had sworn never to return, that William had refused to see him until apologies were made. But now, they were both there, not for the crown, not for the monarchy, but for her, Diana. The one name was powerful enough to pull them back together after everything that had gone wrong. Inside those quiet walls, surrounded by memories of their mother, something began to shift. Hours later, one small leak would send shockwaves across the world. Prince William's words. He had spoken not as the heir to the throne, but as a son, remembering the woman who had shaped his heart. When he began to speak, his voice was steady, though heavy with emotion. "She once told us," he said slowly, "that love is the only legacy worth leaving. I forgot that for a while the chapel grew still. No one expected it, not from William, known for his restraint and duty. But he continued, reaching back into memory instead of blame. He spoke of Diana's compassion, of the day she took them to a homeless shelter in Brixton back in 1993. He recalled how she had told them, "These are the people we serve, not the cameras." Then, in a softer tone, he quoted the words she whispered before public appearances. "You are more than the name on your badge." Every person in the room could feel the change. The air itself seemed to carry her presence. The brothers' tension didn't vanish, but for a brief moment, Diana's spirit filled the gap between them. William admitted what few had dared to say aloud. "We've both made choices," he said quietly, "but none that she would have wanted to divide us." He didn't mention Meghan. He didn't touch the scandals or interviews. He spoke only of their mother's love, the thread that once tied them together, and perhaps could again. When his words ended, the silence that followed was not cold. It was sacred. Because this wasn't about royal protocol or power. It was about a mother whose legacy still commanded the hearts of kings and sons alike. William stepped back slowly, and every gaze turned toward Harry. For years, Harry had spoken about Diana through documentaries and interviews, often in defiance of the family that kept her memory guarded. But never before had he done it here, inside these walls, face to face with his brother. Now the room waited. The air thickened. What would he say? How would he answer his brother's heartfelt words? Stay close, because the next words might just rewrite royal history. The confession. William spoke from the heart. William stood before his brother, his usual composure stripped away, replaced by raw vulnerability. The chapel, already thick with tension, seemed to hold its breath as he began, not with a formal tribute, but a confession that silenced even the aides nearby. His voice trembled as he looked down, unable to meet Harry's eyes. "For years," he said, "I carried Mum's image like a shield. The world saw her as perfect. I thought I had to protect that, even if it meant protecting the wrong people." It was a moment unlike any before. William, the future king, breaking the wall of royal restraint. He admitted that his silence, mistaken for strength, had caused more pain than peace. Behind palace walls, he'd wrestled with guilt for watching their bond crumble and saying nothing. He revealed that during Harry's 2019 media storm, he wanted to call to make things right, but fear stopped him. "I was afraid of breaking the crown," he whispered, "and afraid of breaking Dad." The chapel fell into absolute silence. William then spoke of his mother's haunting words from her 1996 interview. "Being silent doesn't mean I'm weak. It means I'm surviving." Those words echoed in his mind whenever he stood torn between duty and truth. Then, almost hesitantly, he shared a memory no one had ever heard. "The night before Mum's funeral," he said softly, "I stared at her photo and heard her voice. I remember thinking, she wouldn't want us this way, at war." Harry's eyes glistened. He hadn't expected his brother to lay bare his heart. And then came the words that would echo through headlines worldwide. "I failed to speak for her," William confessed, "but I won't fail again." For a moment their eyes locked, years of pain and silence hovering between them. Fragile, but real. Harry stood slowly, emotion clouding his steady expression. "Thank you," he said, voice low but sincere. "That took something." His tone held no bitterness, only truth. "I left because I felt unheard, misunderstood, and sometimes unloved by the institution," he continued, pausing before adding quietly, "but not by you." The air shifted. Something unspoken, something human stirred in that sacred space. He went on to share a piece of his heart even Meghan had never heard. During a 2021 therapy session, he'd been asked which memory of Diana felt most alive. "It wasn't the cameras or the crowds," he said. "It was a thunderstorm at Balmoral when I was 6. I was scared, and Mum held my hand, saying, 'Don't fear the noise, it's just sound.' And I think that's what we forgot. All this, the headlines, the drama, it's just noise." Turning toward William, Harry said, "Thank you for bringing her into the room today. She deserved that, and so did we." For the first time in years, the distance between them seemed smaller, not gone, but softened. The room felt lighter, as though Diana's presence had returned, not as sorrow, but as peace. William rose once more, but his tone had changed. "Mum taught us to serve with empathy, not ego," he said, "to sit beside people, not above them." He recalled her unforgettable moments, visiting AIDS patients in 1987, walking the minefields of Angola in 1997. "She didn't wear the crown," he said, "but she wore the people's trust." Looking at Harry, he added gently, "We both inherited her mission. We just chose different roads to carry it out." That simple truth hit like thunder. No accusation, just understanding. For once, their differences seemed to mirror, not divide. William admitted he'd acted from fear. Fear of backlash, fear of losing control. But Diana, he said, was never afraid. "And I don't want to be anymore." Harry nodded, finally seeing their feud for what it truly was. Not rivalry, but grief. Two sons, mourning the same woman in two different ways. And as the air softened around them, Diana's presence seemed to fill the space, not as a shadow, but as light. The whispers started spreading through royal corridors about how the palace truly felt about this emotional reunion, especially the king. Keep watching to find out. The response that changed everything. If Harry and Meghan's exit shook the monarchy, what came next cracked its foundations. In a series of increasingly personal revelations, first through Oprah Winfrey's bombshell interview, then the explosive Netflix docuseries, and finally Harry's memoir Spare, the couple made sure the world heard their version of the royal story. And in doing so, they shattered what little trust remained between them and the institution they left behind. In Spare, Harry peeled back the curtain on palace life with astonishing detail. From deeply private family conversations to raw accounts of his relationship with Prince William and Queen Camilla, the memoir read less like a reflection and more like a retaliation. Royal tradition thrives on discretion. Harry, however, made privacy a one-way street, fiercely protective of his own family, yet unflinching in exposing the inner workings of his birthright. Then came the Netflix series, which positioned the couple as misunderstood victims trapped in an outdated system. Archival footage, unseen images, and curated commentary reinforced a narrative of betrayal by the media, the monarchy, and even family members. Viewers were captivated. The palace was horrified. But it was the Oprah interview that arguably did the most damage. Meghan's allegation that a royal family member speculated about her son's skin tone cast a global shadow over the House of Windsor. Without naming names, the couple ignited a firestorm. The palace's creed of "never complain, never explain" was put to the ultimate test and left looking painfully outdated in the age of streaming confessions and viral sympathy. Within the monarchy, Harry and Meghan's media crusade raised a chilling question. How can you rebuild trust with someone who profits from your pain? Conversations once whispered behind palace walls now lived forever in print and pixels. For senior royals, any future reconciliation came with a risk. Say the wrong thing, and it might headline tomorrow's tabloids. What Harry framed as catharsis, the Crown interpreted as betrayal. And what Meghan called speaking her truth became, to the firm, a cautionary tale. Trust, once broken, isn't healed by words. It demands silence. And that, so far, is the one thing the Sussexes haven't offered. And could that silence from the king be the firm's final message to Harry? A quiet exile louder than words? Stay tuned. Diana's legacy, shaping the monarchy's future. William didn't walk into that chapel as the Duke of Cambridge. He walked in as a man standing on the edge of kingship, a man who had clearly decided that the monarchy he would one day lead would not mirror the one he was born into. His calm, controlled demeanor carried more weight than any royal speech could. And when his quiet declaration, "No more secrets," found its way into the headlines, it sent ripples through the entire establishment. It wasn't just a statement. It was a rebellion wrapped in restraint, a challenge to a centuries-old system built on silence and appearances. For historians, it marked a turning point. Since Queen Elizabeth II's passing in 2022, the royal family had clung to the safety of tradition, routine ceremonies, polite smiles, and tightly scripted words. But in those few minutes of heartfelt honesty, William shifted the tone. He wasn't tearing down the institution, he was humanizing it. He was opening the palace doors, not to the media, but to empathy, grief, and transparency. In that moment, he wasn't just heir to the throne, he was heir to Diana's legacy. And then there was Harry. For years, he'd been the outcast, the rebel, the one accused of running from duty. Yet in this moment, standing quietly beside his brother, he wasn't the rogue prince anymore. He was something far more powerful, the keeper of their mother's flame. Without words, the dynamic between them began to shift. William, the future king. Harry, the guardian of Diana's compassion. Two sons carrying different parts of the same heart. Royal analysts noticed the change immediately. The headlines moved from feud to healing. It wasn't about the drama anymore. It was about hope. For a monarchy struggling to connect with younger generations, that shift was priceless. Suddenly, the royal family didn't feel distant or outdated. It felt alive again, anchored in the emotion of two brothers learning to forgive. But behind every movement, there is a spark. And in this story, that spark was Diana. 28 years after her death, her influence hadn't faded. It had evolved. She was no longer just a cherished memory. She was the silent force breathing life back into the family she'd once fought to humanize. In the weeks following their reunion, both brothers began honoring her legacy in separate yet strangely synchronized ways. On October 5, 2025, William visited Centerpoint, one of Diana's favorite charities dedicated to homeless youth. His visit mirrored her own from 1991 almost perfectly. He arrived quietly, without photographers crowding him, and laid white roses, Diana's favorite flower, on the doorstep. To a volunteer standing nearby, he said softly, "She never walked past pain. She always stopped." The simplicity of his words carried the same warmth that once defined her. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Harry stood before a crowd in Los Angeles. Through his Archewell Foundation, he announced a new partnership with a mental health organization his mother had secretly supported decades earlier. "She's still working through us," he told the audience, "through every person she ever touched." His voice trembled slightly, and those who listened couldn't help but draw parallels to Diana's famous 1995 interview, the one where she said she wanted to be a queen of people's hearts. The impact was instant. Social media lit up with tributes. Charities linked to Diana's name saw donations triple. Her old documentaries resurfaced on streaming platforms. And her statue at Kensington Palace, unveiled in 2021, became a pilgrimage site once again. Visitors left handwritten notes reading, "You brought them back together." Others wrote, "She would be proud." Rumors began to spread that in 2027, a joint memorial would be held to mark 30 years since Diana's passing. For the first time, sources hinted, both brothers might attend together. If true, it would be the most symbolic reunion yet. A moment where their mother's legacy could finally bridge the gap that duty and distance had created. Still, no royal story is ever neat. Grief doesn't vanish after one heartfelt moment, and forgiveness doesn't arrive fully formed. Beneath the surface, pain lingered, quiet, but persistent. Even as the world celebrated, the brothers carried the heavy truth that some wounds take a lifetime to heal. When the chapel service that started it all finally ended, there were no press conferences, no smiling photo ops, just stillness. The two men stood for a long moment before the altar where Diana had once prayed. A single ray of light cut through the old stained glass, painting them in gold. A royal photographer, one of the few allowed nearby, caught the final image, William turning slightly as Harry reached for the door. No handshake, no farewell, just a silent nod between brothers who had once followed their mother's casket through London's grief and were now, in 2025, walking towards something new. William glanced up, his eyes meeting the ceiling as if seeking her somewhere above. Then, almost imperceptibly, he smiled. Harry stepped forward. Side by side, they walked down the aisle. To outsiders, it looked like closure, but those who knew the story understood. It was only the beginning. Outside, the crowd didn't cheer. They simply watched, caught between disbelief and awe. Someone nearby heard William murmur to an aide, "Let's not lose this again." And later, when asked how he felt, he reportedly said only 5 words. "We speak for her now." And then came the long silence between the two brothers that has fractured the monarchy for long. Let's have a flashback on how deeply this has ruptured the monarchy. King's silent wall. In the wake of his media disclosures and self-imposed exile, Prince Harry found himself staring down a wall far more daunting than any institution: the silence of his own father. Despite Harry's repeated public and private efforts to extend an olive branch, King Charles has remained largely unresponsive, choosing instead to speak through aides, courtiers, and carefully worded palace statements. Direct father-to-son contact has all but evaporated. For Harry, this silence is devastating. In interviews, he has openly admitted how much it pains him that his father won't take his calls. The same man who once walked him behind his mother's coffin now won't pick up the phone. Even as Charles battles cancer and grapples with his advancing age, Harry's efforts to reach across the divide have been met not with hostility, but something colder: distance. This isn't just about family estrangement, it's also about power, control, and legacy. As monarch, Charles must weigh not only his role as a father, but also as the sovereign protector of an institution Harry has repeatedly criticized. To speak to his son now risks appearing weak, or worse, complicit. And with the monarchy's public trust on fragile footing, the stakes have never been higher. But Harry's appeals seem deeply human, not strategic. He has acknowledged their differences. He said candidly that he would love reconciliation. He has expressed concern that time may be running out, referencing his father's declining health with a vulnerability rarely seen in royal circles. There's a sense of urgency in his voice, a quiet desperation not just to make amends, but to be seen, heard, and forgiven. Yet King Charles, for all his talk of modernizing the monarchy, has chosen silence as his defense. Some say it's constitutional prudence. Others see it as a father choosing the crown over his child. Either way, the void between them deepens. What makes it all the more painful is that for Harry, this was never about titles or duties. It was about his children knowing their grandfather, about healing a wound that fame, wealth, and geography have only made worse. But without words, without acknowledgement, the king's silence speaks volumes. And Harry, once again, is left out in the cold. Desperate for reconciliation. Beneath Prince Harry's public defiance lies something quieter and far more telling: a deep longing to reconcile. Stripped of titles, security, and tradition, Harry hasn't completely severed emotional ties with the family he left behind. And nowhere is that more evident than in his repeated, often ignored gestures toward peace, especially with his father, King Charles. Over the past few years, Harry has sent subtle and not-so-subtle olive branches to Buckingham Palace. He invited his father to the 10th anniversary of the Invictus Games, an event that stands as one of Harry's proudest legacies. The invitation went unanswered. No royal showed up. The silence was deafening. Still, Harry didn't lash out. In a heartfelt interview with the BBC, he stripped away the royal polish and spoke like a son, not a prince. His voice cracked with emotion as he expressed frustration over the palace's decision to strip his family of security, describing it as an old-fashioned establishment stitch-up. But more striking was his openness about grief, love, and regret. "I would love reconciliation with my family," he said. "I've moved past a lot. I can forgive." His words weren't rehearsed. They were raw, tinged with sorrow and quiet desperation. He admitted not knowing how much longer his father had left. He spoke of wanting Charles to know his grandchildren, to be part of their lives, even from a distance. It wasn't a demand for power or prestige, it was a plea for connection. But despite these emotional appeals, the palace has remained cautious. To them, Harry is still a liability, a man who once aired royal secrets on global stages and published a memoir full of private details. The trust isn't there, but Harry keeps reaching anyway. Because for him, the monarchy may be out of reach, but his father, at least in his heart, is not. Reconciliation isn't a strategy. It's a need, one he can't seem to let go of, no matter how many doors remain closed. And could Harry's relentless hope be the very thing forcing the monarchy's hand, or just fueling another royal illusion? Keep watching. The Palace Showdown. No trumpet fanfare. No official statement. Just a trembling note, dropped like a secret bomb into Prince William's hands. Eleanor, the loyal aide who refused to let Diana's memory be erased, had written it. The words are short, sharp, impossible to ignore. Camilla ordered the portraits removed. Time seems to stop. William stands frozen in the East Gallery, eyes locked on the empty wall where his mother's smiling portrait once hung. That blank space doesn't just feel empty, it feels like a wound, raw and impossible to ignore. Those portraits weren't mere decoration. They were a bridge between past and present, a testament to the woman who had shaped him, who had shown him how to love without apology and fight without fear, even when the world tried to quiet her. Diana's image, standing beside the faces of George, Charlotte, and Louis, was a promise that her spirit, her guidance, her love would live on in their lives. Charlotte, with her mother's poise and Diana's spark of curiosity, had adored those frames. She once asked if Granny D could see her from them, tilting her head and whispering to the air as if expecting an answer. And now? The absence is a theft. Not of pictures, but of memories, of connection, of family. William's silence hangs heavy in the gallery, louder than any shouting. His jaw is tight, eyes burning with a son's protective fury. Every heartbeat echoes the weight of what's been taken from him, a reminder that some battles aren't fought with swords, but with the courage to stand for what's sacred. Kate arrives, sensing the storm before it even touches her. She's known her own trials, her own moments of being tested by scrutiny and palace politics. Today, the calm she usually wears like armor is gone. Instead, there's fire in her voice, a reflection of William's righteous anger. "This ends now," she says, steady yet cutting, her words slicing through the quiet halls. Together, they summon the aides, demanding answers, their presence a tidal wave of authority and outrage. Who approved this? Why? The palace itself seems to lean in, walls straining to hear, sensing a reckoning unlike any before. William is no longer just the heir to the throne. He is a son whose mother's memory has been threatened, a protector ready to confront anyone who dares challenge that legacy. Each step he takes toward the room where the decision was made carries the weight of history and emotion. Each glance, each inhale, is a warning. The days of silent compliance are over. The tension in the palace is electric, a pulse that can be felt through every corridor and hallway. Camilla's audacious move to erase Diana's presence has awakened a storm that cannot be ignored. And yet, beneath the fury, there is something more. Love. Fierce, unyielding, and unapologetic. Love that drives a son and a mother, united in purpose, to protect not just images in frames, but the essence of a woman who changed the course of their lives forever. This is more than palace politics. This is a clash of wills, a test of courage, a battle between the forces of erasure and remembrance. William faces Camilla's audacious move head-on, a son fiercely defending his mother's legacy as palace secrets flare. The questions linger in the air. Who will bend, who will break, and whose memory will endure untouched? Now let's explore how Prince William confronts Camilla over Diana's portraits.